Zoom, zoom, zoom. Okay. Great. I think we're set up. So yes, thank you for the introduction. As AK said, I am here to talk about design thinking, but I'm going to come from a more artistic slant, an artist perspective on design thinking, if you will. So yes, hello. Thank you so much for inviting me to come speak today. This is actually just a really cool opportunity, and it's my first sort of public speaking engagement. So I've been really excited about this, more than the usual sort of internal work type stuff I'm doing. So thank you for having me, and thank you to this group, honestly, Women in Tech. I want to say the first meetup popped up a couple of months after I sort of entered tech myself. I've only been working in tech for 4 years. And my goodness, this group has been just so helpful and so supportive as I've gone through that journey. There's been so many conversations I've had at those meetups that have really helped me get my head into this new world. So thank you. And yes, my name is Courtney, and I identify first and foremost as an artist. Art is something I have been in pursuit of, I think, since I was a child. But I grew up in rural Alabama, where there wasn't a lot of support for the humanities and liberal arts, and so mostly self-taught, and grew up in an era before the internet. So I spent an awful lot of time with tracing paper, tracing images out of my grandmother's encyclopedia catalog as a way to teach myself to draw back then. And I grew up with this idea of being an artist that, it's someone who can take something and recreate an image or an impression of that that's realistic. And I just thought that was so cool. But certainly as I practiced and moved on from sort of practicing those skills, it's evolved into something completely different. And in fact, I've not really been comfortable calling myself an artist until the last couple of years, where I feel like now the work that I do is a bit more expressive. So the way that manifests these days is things you see here. I tend to do paintings, and I've been doing a project where I do paintings and then I give them away. My goal is to do 500. I've done 100 thus far. I've got 20 more downstairs ready to go. So I'll do little art drops around Sheffield and package them up and leave them out. And I have this random Twitter account where whenever I'm feeling poetic, I tweet out messages of I love you to humanity, to people. I write poetry, I do songwriting, I sing. So that sort of that creativity, that art that I was so determinedly, practicing as I grew up, has really evolved into to more of an expressive form. And I've always found inspiration in nature. I think that's just natural, having come from Alabama and spent an awful lot of time in the outdoors as a child. But it's certainly a place that even today I still find a lot of peace and quiet, and that's where I go to sort of think about and synthesize on things, but also really love just looking deep into nature for the patterns that are there, for the cycles that are there to sort of inform the work that I do and the way that I think now. So, and I'm also a user experience designer. This is probably no surprise. The artsy humanist type folk tend to gravitate toward user experience design. So I'm really interested in how humans interact with all media, right? Not just paintings and poetry and song, but digital media, computers, technology. It's fascinating for me as an artist to sort of engage with this medium and various mediums in many different ways. And as AK said, I am currently at Autodesk working to design better tools for people in construction, and FYI, Sheffielders, we are hiring at the moment, so do go check that out. But I want to give you a little bit of history. I said I came into tech only a few years ago, back in 2017. I still feel like a newbie at times. But before I entered the world of tech, I was in publishing. So after university where I studied graphic design and art and philosophy, I entered into the publishing environment. And I started out as a graphic designer, and over time worked my way up to art director, and was overseeing, you know, the some internationally distributed books and magazines. And publishing is an interesting sector. It's well established, as you can imagine. The printing press has been around for a long time. So there's a few kind of securities and certainties in publishing that sometimes I miss, but we'll give you some insight into my perspective and where I'm coming from. So in publishing, deadlines are real. They're super real. You're working with printers who are part of a supply chain. They've got jobs lined up before and after yours, and if you don't get your job there on time, you're out of luck. We used to refer to our deadlines as drop dead dates because they are. You ship or you don't. So deadlines were really real in publishing. In publishing, context is predictable. You know how people use books and magazines. There's not a lot of mystery around that product, around the way that it's consumed or the conditions under which it might be picked up and used. And also, you know that in December, the Christmas issue of your magazine needs to be on newsstands. So in October, you need to have it at the printer. So that context is always there. It's predictable. And in publishing, your product is well defined, right? It's a book or a magazine. There's not a lot of mystery left in that. But your content, you know, your content's flexible. Your content might change, but the way that your product is packaged and delivered is very well defined. There's a lot of rules and things around that too. And the medium is predictable. You know what happens when ink hits the paper. You know, you're printing in CMYK. Maybe you can convince your boss of a special 5th color to go on the cover, but you understand your medium and how it works, and it's yeah, predictable. In publishing, data drives content decisions. So this one is really interesting to me because I see data and software now being used in different ways, but in publishing, again, very well-established industry, very mature industry. You know, we had marketing teams who would do sort of customer research, user research, focus groups, who would check for trends and look up sort of Google keywords and things like that to understand what kind of content we could produce for our customers. And fun fact, white cakes really sell magazines. We were always being told, put a white cake on the cover, even of like sewing magazines. So yeah, we would get information in like that from our marketing teams. And then, you know, from the sort of production perspective, of those of us who are the art directors, the editors, we were really engaged with our audiences. When you're working in content and media, your audiences are super engaged. They're generally very passionate about the content that you're putting out. So we had a lot of really direct sort of interactions and engagement with our users, our customers. And because they were passionate about sort of the niche space that we were in. They were very vocal about what they liked, what they didn't like, what they wanted to see, that kind of thing. So we just constantly had data coming into our environment. So then 10 years of publishing, I make a switch to software. I had a number of reasons for this. One was just, you know, a lot of changes happening in publishing. It started to feel a little uncertain. Two, I just really wanted to challenge myself. When I studied design, I studied a lot of human-centric design principles, and, you know, read a lot of Don Norman and things like that. I was always just really keen to kind of get in and try my hand at design and sort of this different realm with this different medium. And when I entered software, I really thought, hey, this is going to be cutting edge. These guys, like, they're working rapidly. This is like Silicon Valley has exploded all over the world. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff going on. I can't wait. But over time, you know, after observing a little bit and being in the space for a little while longer, there certainly is a lot of cutting edge stuff that's going on. There's a lot of really cool innovations and technology and that sort of emerge out of our sector. But I think the key thing to remember here is that software development, tech, you know, our jobs probably didn't exist 15 years ago. It's a very young sector, very young industry. So I'd say we're still going through some growing pains. So a report from the field, 4 years in software, a couple of patterns are starting to emerge. And I think it's worth mentioning, worth noting here that I work in enterprise software. I've worked for 2 different companies so far, Autodesk now. Before I was working for a company that made financial software, both of them enterprise software vendors, which is just, it's a level of complexity that's particularly interesting, I think, for people who like puzzles. So, but over the course of a few years, and I think this is certainly applicable in many areas, you start to hear things like this, you know, that we're delivering in July probably means we're delivering in November at the earliest. You'll be lucky to have it by January though, like, let's be honest. So those deadlines, kind of fluid, really soft, you know, don't tend to really stick to them. And that can create a little bit of uncertainty at times. Sometimes it's a good thing because it means you get to keep working on something, keep perfecting it. But then it can kind of, over time, I think it generates a little bit of uncertainty. We have a working prototype, means we built half of it, the rest is smoke and mirrors. Please don't click that button, it's gonna break something. So prototypes prototypes can be really good when you're working, especially if you can work sort of lo-fi and just really test and validate some ideas. But when it comes to really establishing, you know, context and understanding the limitations of the medium, sometimes they don't really serve that purpose that well, and it's difficult to kind of get a handle on that at times about, you know, the context of how the users, you know, so you can do a test with users with a prototype, but how will they really use it? Under what conditions will they use it? Will there be sun glaring on the screen? Will they be holding a screaming child? You know, there's so many variables in the consumption of what you're producing. And the medium's hard to get a hold of sometimes too, with just different technologies being woven together to produce a solution. That often what sort of gets built and developed on you know, at the end is quite different than what you're able to really prototype. So it's just difficult to get a handle on that context and that predictability. And workflow. Does anyone else get a little bit of PTSD when you hear this term, workflow? Workflow, it's that thing that we want to believe our users are doing, but it's impossible to nail down because they all do things differently. They will find different novel ways to use any tool that you give them, whether it's like within the tool itself, or especially in the case of enterprise, when you know, maybe we have a customer who's using software, but then they integrate lots of third-party solutions into it, and suddenly it completely changes what you're delivering. It's really hard to nail down. And MVP, I mean, I've yet to meet an MVP that I like. I've yet to meet an MVP that was really minimum and viable, or that got out in less than 18 months. I think this tends to happen all the time. But yeah, so all right. So we've got a little bit of uncertainty in software. And again, it's a new industry. So this is certainly not, I don't want to be too harsh in my criticisms here. I recognize that publishing has been around for a long time, very well established, runs like clockwork. But software, we've got these growing pains, we've got these complex problems to solve. And so we are starting to solve those in some ways. We have a lot of methodologies and toolkits and things like that, including Agile. Everyone's familiar with Agile. Design thinking, we're talking about that here today. That's another methodology that's really useful in starting to add structure to the work that we do. Ops, you can opsify anything. DevOps, research ops, design ops, HR ops, just put ops on it. You can do it. But these are all like ways we're trying to find processes, right? Things to sort of create a little bit more certainty in our environment. And that's all fine and well, and it's good that that's happening, but we can't ignore the fact that, that uncertainty, it feels a little bit chaotic. It's felt chaotic for me. I imagine that a lot of people experience these feelings of just chaos and what's going on, and struggling to kind of really get a grasp of the work that's being built and delivered. And I really feel that chaos is kind of the enemy of creativity and creative thinking. And that hurts me dearly as an artist to see that happening, and to see creative thinking and ideas get stifled in our organizations, in our environments, you know, due to this chaos and due to this uncertainty. So that's really what I want to kind of talk to you about today, is give you a few tips, okay? Some things that we can all do as individuals to restore some creativity, or to really inject some creativity into the realm of software development. And so what I'm going to talk to you about, I've got 4 sort of tips here. It's not how to think like an artist. It's not how to draw. It's not what workshop you should run to get the right ideas. This is about you. This is about each individual in this call, or in this session. You've all got very, you know, special, unique perspectives. You know, you all have grown up in completely different ways. Each individual is a universe unto yourselves. And I really feel like what we need in these complex environments is that individual creativity. We need that creativity to come, you know, to bear on the problems that we're facing. So I'm going to talk to you about some behaviors that you can adopt to start behaving more like an artist, to practice your creativity. So the first thing is capture everything, right? What I mean by that is liberate your brain, be kind to your brain, get everything out of your head that you possibly can. Our brains are actually, we are not capable as human beings of holding very many things in our brains at any one point in time. That's all of us. So the best thing to do is just to get things out of your head as they come to your head. We all know how much pain it causes when you have a brilliant idea and you think, oh, I'm going to note that down when I get home later or later on. And when you go to actually note it down, the idea is gone. You can't remember it. It's so frustrating. So the best thing to do is just to get it out of your head, whether it's an idea, something on your to-do list, just clear your head, write it, sketch it, record it. I've personally become a big fan of voice memos as of late. I drafted this talk using a voice memo, and then just was able to kind of use that as an outline. Any method you've got, whether you're using a Post-it note or a fancy journal or anything like that, but just get it out. There's no perfect method. If you start Googling this stuff, you'll be sold bullet journaling and fancy journals of all sorts and different apps, and that's great, but there's no perfect method. It's only important that you just do it. Just get stuff out of your head. And creativity really likes momentum. And I feel actually like this is almost like a secret of artists. Like we know, we just have to come to the canvas and just get this stuff out. But creativity likes momentum. The more you create, the more you'll do. Action begets action. So just be prolific in getting stuff out of your head. And when you're getting stuff out of your head, don't be too precious. This is the second one. You've probably all heard that phrase, you know, kill your darlings, that kind of thing. It's a little bit like that, but what I want you to remember is that it's about quantity over quality. You got to get the stuff out of your head. And the best way to kind of get to the good stuff over time is just to get all the stuff out first, including the bad stuff. Now, we can all be honest with ourselves. Sometimes we have really bad ideas, and that's okay because we're human. But the best way to kind of get past those things is just to get them out, and commit to that process of keeping up that practice, right? It's an evolution. Ideas, creativity, art, it's an evolution. For me personally, it's, you know, I did say I'd been practicing this since I was a child, but it was only in the last couple of years that I was able to really start expressing myself through this practice. And I felt that it, you know, that was enabled by the fact that I really engaged and started applying myself to really practicing. Like this project I'm doing of 500 paintings, I started that about a year ago. And just in the act of doing that, I feel that it makes me a more creative person because I'm able to just show up, let my filter down and get the stuff out there. So just focus on that, quantity over quality, and the good stuff will absolutely emerge over time. The next thing here is feed your interests. Feed your interests. A question that I ask myself very often is, what's your news? Courtney, what is your news, right? My news is not BBC or MSNBC or CNN or what's happening on Twitter. It's not the Kardashians. My news is the stuff that I'm passionate about. It's art. I've been studying like systems theory and cybernetic stuff lately. It's songwriting, it's poetry. That's my news. That's the stuff I'm interested in. I think that's really important for all of us to remember. It's so easy to get distracted and pulled away from the stuff that makes you you. But don't let that happen. Follow your nose, nourish your curiosity, and just never stop learning. I think if you have a question, seek an answer, and then keep seeking answers. I'd say in the last couple of years, I think part of this was triggered by me entering the world of tech, where suddenly I was having to just learn a whole lot of new stuff and new concepts really quickly. And I found that the best way to learn new stuff quickly is just to kind of go broad, read a lot of stuff, find a lot of answers, and then distill a little bit. So when you do that, you start to sort of find like core principles of things. And that, I feel, is how you get to little nuggets of truth in those explorations. So do that, seek those answers, seek the alternatives, and trust your instincts. I'm really concerned sometimes that we tend to, or we've been conditioned to ignore our feelings. But our instincts are there for a reason. That's that gut feeling you've got. It's your internal compass. I really believe that we all need to listen to that and follow it, and just allow yourself to be carried away if it's an alternative realm or something you think, this isn't for me. Who cares? If it's hit you, if you're interested, if you've got that little bug, just follow it. Give yourself time and space to do that. It's totally worth it. Often, really important creative solutions will emerge from alternative contexts, and from following, maybe following those little rabbit holes that pick your interest. And the last thing is let go. So what I mean by that, a couple things really, is that you need to really try adopting a beginner's mindset. It's really good to sort of let go of your specialism, of your expertise, and try and take a step back and think about things differently. This certainly is part of the design thinking practice, to sort of empathize with your users and understand things from their perspective. But yeah, try to think about things maybe through a child's eyes. Ask those big what if, blue sky questions. Ask why, and just keep asking why. And do things like, I like to, little thought experiment I enjoy doing is to think about things as if you were an alien. Extract yourself from the situation. Imagine extracting yourself from the situation. Imagine having a bird's eye view over things and being able to kind of zoom in and out. I think you can do different kind of mental exercises to help you gain some perspective, and just talking to people too, like having conversations. If you've got some ideas that have come up, have some conversations about that thing. That will help you to sort of flex your perspective and maybe let go of a certain viewpoint you might have started with. So just take that, go broad, go big, go weird, and then connect back, take all that and sort of connect it back to the idea or the problem you're trying to solve. And the last thing here is in terms of letting go, let go of perfectionism. Give yourself some space. Be gentle on yourself. You don't want to show up and feel like you have to, get the thing right as soon as you get the idea perfect as soon as you commit it to a piece of paper or to a sketch or anything like that. No. Ideas need time. Any kind of creative thinking needs time and development. So think about it, hey, adopt some of our thinking from the software world, from the tech world. Think about your ideas in versions, right? Iterate on them, prototype them, build them and develop them. And by prototype them, I mean, that could just be a conversation about them. You talk through it with someone, that kind of thing. So just let go of that perfectionism and just keep pushing them forward. And sometimes it's really good just to walk away. I do this a lot when I'm painting or writing. I might leave something for a while, take a break from it, and then come back to it later, and just come back with a fresh perspective. So just kind of give yourself a break from focusing too long on something. I think that's a really valuable thing to do. So to recap here, your practices, things I'd love for you to take away and try out, are to capture everything. You know, let your filters down, get everything out of your head. Don't expect yourself to, or don't put pressure on yourself to try and remember everything. It's just not what humans are made to do. So capture everything. Don't be precious, right? Quantity over quality. Just get it out. Get the bad stuff out first. The good stuff will definitely come. Feed your interest. Ask yourself that question. Is this my news? What is my news? Seek that. That's how you're going to find your passion, you know, your purpose. I think that's really important. That's what's going to bring your own individual creativity, your own perspective to bear on these problems. And that is really important. And yeah, let go, right? Don't focus too much on, there's no perfectionism here. Be a little bit messy and give some space to your ideas and to the process. But keep it going, keep coming back to it. It's a practice. So I'd like to leave you with this quote by Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci, who I certainly was using tracing paper to sketch with when I was a kid learning how to draw. I was always fascinated with him. Someone who studied very broadly and really contributed to a number of fields and was, you know, an amazing artist as well. And he said this: study the science of art, study the art of science, develop your senses, especially learn how to see, realize that everything connects with everything else. I feel like the things I'm giving you today are really, they're meant to help you develop your senses, to learn how to see. And as you do that, as you really make a practice of you know, getting your own ideas out there, working on your creativity, and over time, even like gaining confidence in getting that stuff out there, right? That you'll understand, because you're starting to, you know, you're nurturing those things, you're sharing them more, you'll start to see the connections in everything else. And it just opens up a world for you. So practice developing your creative senses, and let me know how it goes. So thank you.